The poison looked like sugar. The choice felt like dying. And the man whose drink I was about to lace was standing in his bedroom doorway, watching me fall apart like shattered porcelain. I pressed my face against the cashmere coats hanging in Kim Dante's walk-in closet, the expensive fabric smelling of sandalwood and gunpowder, and a kind of wealth I'd never even dreamed of touching in 5 lifetimes. My whole body shook with sobs. I was desperately trying to swallow, trying to muffle against silk linings and Italian wool, but they kept ripping through my chest like something feral trying to claw its way out. The crystal decanter of bourbon was so tight in my grip that my knuckles had gone ghost white, and the tiny vial in my other hand, filled with white powder that promised death as quiet as a whisper and as certain as sunrise, felt like it weighed more than my entire existence. More than my soul, more than the 4 years I'd spent loving a little boy who was dying because I couldn't afford to save him. Then the door didn't just open. It exploded inward. The hinges screamed as the heavy wood slammed against the wall, flooding my hiding place with harsh light that felt like exposure, like judgment, like the end of everything. I knew, in that single devastating moment, that my carefully constructed lies had just shattered beyond any hope of repair. Standing there in the doorway, taking up the entire frame with his 6'4" presence that always made the air feel dangerous and thin, was Kim Dante himself, the dragon, the most feared crime lord in the entire Pacific Northwest, the man whose morning coffee I prepared at exactly 6:45 in hand-painted porcelain cups I washed by hand because he said machines left residue, the man whose obsidian eyes could make career criminals confess to crimes they hadn't even committed yet, whose reputation was built on calculated violence and a kind of cold precision that made people disappear without a trace. He stood there shirtless, and I could see every inch of the artwork that marked him as lethal. A dragon coiled up his ribcage in black and gold ink, so detailed that the scales seemed to shift when he breathed. The Kim family crest sat over his heart, a phoenix rising from flames, marking him as someone born into darkness who'd learned to make it beautiful. Fresh blood was splattered across his knuckles from whatever brutal business he'd just finished handling in the basement I was never allowed to enter. He held a gun in one hand, his phone in the other, and his expression shifted from lethal readiness to something I'd never seen cross his devastatingly dangerous face before, genuine concern. For 9 months I'd been the perfect ghost, the efficient, invisible housekeeper who never flinched when blood-stained men tracked violence across the marble floors I'd have to clean, who never asked questions about the duffel bags stuffed with cash or the conversations in Korean about territories and shipments and people who needed to vanish, who kept my eyes down and my hands steady even when his world of organized crime crashed against the walls of this penthouse like violent waves against fragile glass. I had been so careful, so meticulously professional, cleaning his empire with microfiber cloths and lemon-scented polish, keeping my inappropriate awareness of him buried so deep beneath survival instinct that I almost convinced myself it didn't exist. But now everything was crumbling, and the one person I never wanted to see me broken was staring at me with an intensity that made my already racing heart feel like it might explode right through my ribcage. Because I wasn't just caught crying. I was caught with murder in my hands and desperation in my heart, standing in his closet like the traitor they'd forced me to become. "Amara," he said. The way my name rolled off his tongue in that deep, commanding voice that usually barked orders about handling problems and eliminating threats made something inside my chest crack even wider, because there was a gentleness there I'd never heard before, a softness that seemed impossible coming from a man who reportedly once killed 4 rivals with a katana in an underground fight ring, never breaking a sweat, never showing an ounce of mercy. He stepped into the closet, and suddenly the space felt impossibly small. His broad shoulders and muscular frame swallowed all the oxygen, and I watched through tear-blurred vision as he holstered his gun with practiced ease before reaching out with one large, calloused hand to tilt my chin up with surprising tenderness, forcing me to meet those storm-dark eyes that seemed to see straight through every defense I'd ever built, every lie I'd ever told, every desperate prayer I'd whispered into darkness. "Who made you cry?" he asked, his voice dropping to something soft and deadly. And then, with the casual certainty of a man who solved problems with permanent solutions, he added, "And how would you like me to dispose of their body?" The question should have terrified me, should have reminded me exactly what kind of man I worked for, what kind of darkness lived behind those expensive tailored suits, and that calculating gaze that missed nothing, ever. But instead, something warm and desperate unfurled in my stomach, because for the first time in my entire life, someone was offering to shoulder my burdens, to eliminate my problems with the kind of brutal efficiency that only a man like Kim Dante could provide, a man who commanded an empire built on fear and loyalty and blood money. I opened my mouth to lie, to brush it off as nothing, to maintain the professional distance that had kept me employed and alive for these past 9 months. But the words died in my throat when I saw the way his jaw clenched, the way his free hand curled into a fist at his side, as if he was physically restraining himself from hunting down whoever had caused my tears, from burning the entire city down, until I smiled again. Then his eyes, those bottomless black eyes that missed absolutely nothing, dropped to my hands, to the crystal decanter of bourbon, to the vial of white powder clutched in my shaking fingers like a confession I couldn't take back. The air in the closet changed, went cold and sharp as a blade pressed against skin. "Amara," he said again. But this time my name sounded different, dangerous, like a question and an accusation and a promise of violence, all wrapped into 3 syllables that felt like they could cut me open. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but watch as Kim Dante, the dragon, the man who'd shown me more respect in 9 months than anyone had in my entire life, reached down and gently, so impossibly gently, took the vial from my trembling hand. He held it up to the light, watching the white powder shift inside the glass. His expression remained perfectly neutral, perfectly controlled, but I could see the muscle jumping in his jaw, could feel the tension radiating off him in waves. "Did they promise you he wouldn't feel pain?" he asked, his voice soft as silk, deadly as the poison itself. My breath caught. He knew about Isaiah, about my son. "Because they lied to you, Amara." And then, while I watched in absolute frozen horror, he uncapped the vial, poured the white powder into the bourbon I'd been meant to serve him during his midnight routine, swirled it once to mix, and lifted the glass to his lips. "No!" The scream tore from my throat as I lunged forward, my hands reaching desperately to knock the glass away, to stop him from swallowing what should have been his death. But he was faster, always faster. He caught both my wrists with one hand while he drank with the other, his eyes never leaving mine as he swallowed down what should have killed him within minutes. The glass hit the floor when he finished, shattering into 1,000 glittering pieces, just like everything I thought I understood about this moment. But Kim Dante didn't collapse, didn't gasp for air, didn't die. He just stood there, perfectly still, perfectly alive, watching me fall apart with an expression that was somehow tender and terrifying all at once. "I've spent the last 6 years building immunity to 17 different toxins," he said quietly, his thumb stroking the inside of my wrist where my pulse hammered wildly. "Small doses every day, ricin, arsenic, cyanide compounds, hemlock derivatives, just in case someone got close enough to try exactly this." I couldn't process his words, couldn't understand. "But I didn't want to test my limits tonight," he continued, releasing my wrists so he could cup my face in both hands, forcing me to look at him even though I wanted to disappear, wanted to die, wanted anything but this. "4 days ago I swapped the poison in your apartment. What you just watched me drink was powdered sugar and water." My legs gave out. Only his hands kept me upright, his grip strong and steady while my entire world tilted sideways. "I've been watching you, Jagia," he continued, using the Korean endearment that meant something precious, something cherished. "Watching you agonize every single night over whether you could actually do it, whether you could kill me to save your son. And you know what I learned about you, Amara?" I couldn't speak, could barely breathe through the sobs that were building again. His thumb brushed away a tear that had escaped down my cheek. "You couldn't. Even when they told you Isaiah would die screaming. Even when they sent you videos of him suffering in that hospital bed, tubes in his little arms. Even then, you couldn't pull the trigger. You'd rather watch your own The bedroom hit me like a physical force. All gunmetal gray silk and floor-to-ceiling windows that framed Seattle's skyline like a postcard from some beautiful, terrible dream. Rain hammered the glass in violent sheets, each drop catching the neon glow from the streets below, turning the entire room into a kaleidoscope of crimson and electric blue shadows that made everything feel unreal. My feet barely touched the cold marble floor as Dante pulled me forward, his grip on my wrist neither cruel nor gentle, just absolute, the kind of touch that said, "You don't get to fall apart yet, not until I allow it." I tried to wrench free anyway, my voice cracking like broken glass. "Please, Isaiah needs his medication. They said if I didn't finish the job by midnight, they'd stop his treatment. They said he'd start seizing again, and I can't watch him." The words dissolved into hiccuping sobs because my brain couldn't process it anymore. The poison that wasn't poison. The test I'd apparently failed by not being a murderer. The way this man had swallowed what should have been his death just to prove some kind of point about my character that I didn't understand. Dante released me so suddenly that I stumbled, catching myself on the edge of a bed that could have easily fit 6 people. The sheets were black silk, because of course they were. Everything in this place screamed control, from the minimalist art on the walls, abstract violence in shades of red, to the single white orchid on the nightstand. Perfect, and probably more expensive than 3 months of my rent. He moved to the window, his bare back to me, and I saw the full artwork for the first time in proper light. The dragon wasn't just on his ribcage. It coiled across his entire back in obsidian and gold ink, scales so detailed and intricate they seemed to shift and breathe with each movement. The Kim family crest sat at the base of his spine, the phoenix rising from ashes, surrounded by Korean characters I couldn't read. His shoulders carried scars, thin white lines that spoke of knives that had gotten too close, bullets that had barely missed. Blood still streaked his knuckles, drying to rust brown against golden skin. "You think I'm the monster?" he said, his voice low enough that I had to stop crying to hear it. "You're standing in my home, sent to kill me by people who poisoned your child, and somehow you think I'm the villain in this story. You drank poison to mess with my head." The accusation burst out of me, sharp and desperate and edged with hysteria. "You could have just told me you knew. You didn't have to make me watch you do that. You didn't have to—" He turned, and the city lights behind him created a halo of rain-fractured color around his silhouette, making him look like some dark angel. His face was all brutal angles, sharp jaw and sharper cheekbones, lips that looked carved from stone by someone who understood cruelty as an art form. But his eyes. God, his eyes were the worst part. Dark and depthless, they didn't just look at me. They dissected me, peeling back every defense, every lie, every desperate hope, until I felt completely naked despite my soaked uniform still clinging to my skin. "If I'd told you," he said, approaching slowly, each step deliberate, a predator who knew his prey had nowhere left to run, "you would have panicked, warned them. They would have killed you in some alley before sunrise and made Isaiah watch the video." He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that I could smell copper penny blood mixed with something darker, richer. Bergamot and smoke and expensive cologne that probably cost more than my car. The Crimson Serpent doesn't forgive failure, Amara. They needed to believe you tried, that you broke under the pressure, that the poison was real, and I died screaming in agony. His voice dropped even lower. "So I gave them a performance, and you gave me the truth." My hands fisted in my stained apron, the white fabric now gray with dust and tears. What truth? That I'm a coward? That I can't even save my own— The word son stuck in my throat, jagged and cutting, because Marcus had made me lie. "Say he's your nephew," he'd insisted, his eyes wild with fear, and something else I hadn't recognized then. "They'll use a kid against you differently if they know he's yours. Trust me, Amara. I'm trying to protect you both." "That you're not a killer," Dante said, his voice softening just barely. just enough to feel like a caress instead of a command. The serpent has sent 37 people before you. Smiling bartenders, friendly mechanics, a therapist once who lasted 3 sessions before she tried to inject me during a vulnerability exercise. His gaze flicked to a nearly invisible scar along his collarbone, and I wondered which attempt had left that mark. None of them hesitated, he continued. You did. Even with your nephew dying, even with videos of him crying for you, you couldn't pour the glass. You stood in my closet for 47 minutes, Amara. I watched you on the security feed, watched you try to work up the courage and fail over and over again. He's not. I bit my lip hard enough to taste copper. Isaiah is 4 years old. He has nightmares about sea monsters, and he won't eat anything green, and he... My voice shattered completely. He's running out of time, and you're standing here playing psychological games while he's dying. Something flickered across Dante's face, gone too fast to name, but it looked almost like pain. He moved past me to the wall, his fingers finding a seam I hadn't noticed in the smooth surface. With a soft electronic click, a panel slid open silently, revealing a bank of monitors that hummed to life with cold blue light. The air left my lungs in a rush. 6 screens, 6 different angles. One showed the penthouse living room, the same room I'd vacuumed just yesterday afternoon, now empty and dark. Another showed the building's underground, parking garage. A third showed what looked like a warehouse interior. The 4th screen made my knees buckle. Isaiah's hospital room. The image was grainy, surveillance quality, but clear enough to see every devastating detail. The rails on his bed, the IV stand with bags of fluid I couldn't afford, the monitors tracking his vitals in neon green lines that spiked and dipped with each labored breath, and Isaiah, my baby boy, tiny and fragile under white sheets that made his brown skin look ashen, sickly. His small hand curled around the stuffed elephant I'd won at a carnival 3 years ago, back when everything was still okay, back when I thought hard work and love would be enough to protect him from the world. But he wasn't alone. A woman sat in the chair beside his bed, compact and still, dressed in scrubs that didn't quite hide the weapon holstered at her hip. Something dark rested across her lap. It took my brain several seconds to register it as a gun. I couldn't form complete words. You have someone guarding him. 4 people. Dante's voice came from directly behind me, close enough that his breath stirred my hair, sending involuntary shivers down my spine. Rotating shifts every 6 hours. The Crimson Serpent owns the hospital administration, 3 board members, and the head of security. But they don't own the night nurses. They don't own the parking garage attendants. And they definitely don't own the private security firm I installed on the pediatric floor. His hand came to rest on my shoulder, heavy and warm. My people have been inside since the day they moved Isaiah there. Since before you even knew about the job opening in my household. I spun around and suddenly he was right there, inches away, his chest a wall of ink and muscle and radiating heat. Why? You don't know us. Isaiah is nothing to you. I'm just the woman who scrubs your floors and makes your coffee and you think that's all I see. He tilted his head, studying me like I was a puzzle with missing pieces he was determined to find. You think I don't notice things? His hand rose, and I flinched before I could stop myself, the instinct born from too many years of bracing for impact. He froze, jaw tightening with something that looked like anger, but not at me. Then, deliberately, slowly, he reached past me to tap a command on the screen. A new window opened, a file directory with my name at the top in bold white letters. Amara Sophie Chen, complete background. Amara Sophie Chen, he read, his voice taking on a clinical quality that somehow made it worse. 27 years old, daughter of Wei Chen, deceased from a construction accident when you were 16. Mother, Linda Chen, deceased from complications of diabetes when you were 22. No siblings listed on any legal document. His finger scrolled down, almost lazy, and I watched my entire life reduced to bullet points and data entries. Dropped out of Seattle Pacific University Junior. Year, 3 months before graduation. To work 4 jobs simultaneously. Certified nursing assistant, but your license lapsed 8 months ago when you couldn't afford the $500 renewal fee. My stomach turned to ice. Each word felt like a violation. You applied to the Prestige staffing agency 6 weeks ago, he continued, his eyes never leaving the screen, cataloging my desperation in real time. They placed you here in 48 hours, fastest hire on record for a position in my household. He glanced at me, and something almost like amusement tugged at the corner of his mouth. Do you know why? I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Because I bought the agency 3 years ago. Cleaning services, staffing companies, temp agencies, they all make excellent fronts for intelligence gathering. The serpent thinks they're clever, embedding their asset in my home through legitimate channels. His smile was razor sharp. They don't realize I let them. I bought your contract the day it was filed, Amara. Every move you've made, every phone call to your brother, every tear you've cried in my closet thinking you were alone. I've been watching all of it. The violation of it hit like a physical slap. You sick! Careful. The word cracked like a whip, and suddenly his hand was around my throat, not squeezing, not cutting off air, just there. A reminder of how easily he could. His thumb pressed against my racing pulse, feeling the proof of my terror, my anger, my helpless fury. You came into my home to murder me, he said, his voice dropping to something soft. Morning came like a knife to the throat. Gray light seeped through the curtains, soft and apologetic, as if the sun itself was ashamed to illuminate what this day would reveal. I hadn't slept. How could I? With Isaiah's face burned into my retinas and the phantom weight of Dante's hand still warm against my throat, I'd curled up on top of the black silk sheets, shoes still on, uniform still damp with rain and tears, and watched the monitors until my eyes felt like sandpaper. Watched my baby breathe. Watched the guard change at 2 a.m, a different woman this time, older, who checked Isaiah's vitals with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. The door opened without a knock. Dante entered carrying a tray, dressed now in black slacks and a crisp charcoal shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. The dragon's head peeked out from his collar, and in the pale morning light, he looked less like a crime lord and more like some dark prince from a twisted fairy tale where the monster turns out to be the hero. Eat. He set the tray on the nightstand with careful precision. Green tea in a ceramic cup, still steaming. Rice porridge with scallions. Grilled mackerel that made my traitorous stomach clench with hunger I'd been ignoring for 3 days straight. I'm not hungry. You will be. He pulled a thick manila folder from under his arm and dropped it on the bed beside me with a heavy thud that felt like a death sentence. After you read that, I stared at the folder like it might explode. What is it? The truth about your brother. He moved to the window, hands in his pockets, giving me space that somehow felt more suffocating than his closeness. Open it, Amara, or spend the rest of your life wondering if I'm the liar here. My hands shook as I reached for it. The folder was still warm from where it had been tucked against his body, and that small intimacy made my skin prickle with something I didn't want to examine. Inside, there were photographs, bank statements, security footage stills printed on glossy paper. The first photo showed Marcus walking into a building I didn't recognize. Brick facade with neon signage, a red serpent glowing above the door like a warning. The timestamp read, 3 months ago. 2 weeks before Isaiah got sick. My mouth went dry. The next image showed Marcus at a card table, chips stacked high in front of him, laughing with men whose faces were partially blurred, but whose expensive suits screamed money and violence. Another timestamp, 2 months ago. No, the word came out strangled. Marcus doesn't gamble. He promised Mom before she died. He swore on her grave he'd never... Keep going. Dante's voice was flat, factual. Merciless. I flipped pages with numb fingers that didn't feel like they belonged to me anymore. Bank statements in Marcus Chen's name showing deposits I knew he couldn't have earned driving for rideshare services. 15,000 here, 20,000 there. Withdrawals in cash, large and frequent, the kind of money that meant something illegal, something dark. Then a receipt that made my vision blur. Debt settlement agreement. Crimson Serpent Holdings. Date. 6 weeks before Isaiah's diagnosis. Amount paid, $75,000. Method of payment. Information brokerage. Target KD. Kim Dante. Vulnerability assessment KD. Household infiltration via Chen A. The letter swam on the page. KD, Kim Dante, Chen, A, Amara Chen. He sold me out first, I whispered, the words tasting like acid. Before Isaiah got sick, before any of this. He sold me out to pay his gambling debts. He told them about the staffing agency, Dante said, still facing the window, still giving me the mercy of not watching me break. About how you were desperate for work after losing your nursing license. About Isaiah's medical needs. About every vulnerability you had. He paused, and I heard him take a breath. They didn't randomly choose your nephew, Amara. Marcus gave them the blueprint, told them exactly how to manufacture leverage against you. The disease Isaiah has? It was synthesized in a lab, custom made to need a specific antidote that only the serpent controls. Your brother handed them the knife and showed them exactly where to stab. The folder slipped from my hands. Photos scattered across the black sheets like evidence at a crime scene, each one a small death. One landed face up, Marcus shaking hands with a woman in crimson silk. Her face was sharp and elegant, older, with silver threading through black hair pulled into a severe bun. She wore authority like other people wore perfume. Her smile was cultured, refined, and absolutely deadly. "The Serpent Queen," I breathed. "My grandmother," Dante replied, and his voice carried a weight that made me look up sharply. "You're what?" He turned from the window, and his expression was terrible in its careful blankness. "It's a long story, but the short version is that she hates everything I've built, hates that I took over the Kim family business from my father and cleaned it up, hates that I refuse to follow the old ways of human trafficking and drug running, hates that I won't marry the woman she chose to secure her political alliances." He crossed to the bed, crouching down so we were eye level, and even through my shock I registered how devastating he was up close. All sharp edges and dangerous grace, like a blade made human. So she built her own empire to rival mine, the Crimson Serpent Syndicate, and she's been trying to kill me for 3 years using every method imaginable. "And my brother," I said slowly, pieces clicking together in a picture so ugly I wanted to look away, "owed money, got desperate, made a deal." "He told her about you," Dante confirmed, picking up the photo and studying it with clinical detachment. "About Isaiah. She synthesized the disease specifically, Amara, custom designed to create maximum desperation. Then she offered you a way to save him. All you had to do was poison me." The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the bed, breathing hard, because the pieces were coming together, and the picture they formed was so much worse than I'd imagined. My own brother. My blood. The person who'd held me at Mom's funeral and promised we'd survive anything together. "Marcus knew," I said, and it wasn't a question anymore. He knew they'd use Isaiah like this. He knew they'd make him sick. He knew. My voice cracked completely. He was there when Isaiah was born. He cried when he held him the first time. He said he'd protect him always. He said he needed money more than he needed a conscience. Dante rose, and suddenly he was too close, his presence filling the space between us. "I'm sorry. I know you want him to be better than this. But men like him don't change, Amara. They just get better at lying." "You don't know him." "I know his type." His hand came up, and this time I didn't flinch when he cupped my face, tilting it up so I had to meet his eyes. "I've killed dozens of them, small-time hustlers who think they can play in the big leagues, who convince themselves that selling out family is just survival, who tell themselves it's not their fault right up until the moment someone puts a bullet in their head for being a liability." Tears spilled over, hot and angry and full of a grief I didn't know how to process. "So what? You want me to hate him? You want me to thank you for destroying the last family I have left?" "I want you to survive." His thumb brushed my cheekbone, wiping away moisture with a tenderness that made my chest physically ache. "Because the serpent won't stop with Isaiah. Once you failed to kill me, you became a loose end. And Marcus?" His grip tightened just enough to make me focus. "He's already spending the second half of his payout. He won't save you when they come for you next. He'll sell you out again if it means keeping himself safe." "He's still my family," I choked out, but the words felt hollow now, empty. "No." Dante's voice was absolute. "He was your family, past tense. The moment he traded Isaiah's life for poker chips, he severed that tie. You just haven't accepted it yet." I wanted to scream at him, wanted to claw that certainty out of his eyes. But the photos were right there, scattered across the bed like autopsy reports, and I couldn't unsee them, couldn't unfeel the cold truth settling into my bones like frost. Why do you care? The question came out broken. What am I to you? Why go through all this elaborate setup just to... The door burst open with enough force to slam against the wall. A man strode in, tall and lean with silver-streaked hair and a suit too expensive for anyone who wasn't either a Fortune 500 CEO or a high-level criminal. He stopped short when he saw us, Dante's hand still cradling my face, me with tears streaming and evidence of betrayal everywhere. "Hyungnim," the man said in Korean, then switched to accented English when he saw me. "We have a situation." Dante didn't move, didn't drop his hand. "I'm busy, Jin." The serpent called. Jin's gaze flicked to me, something like pity crossing his features. "They want proof of death by noon tomorrow or they start cutting pieces off the kid, 1 finger per hour until you comply." The world dropped out from under me. Dante's hand fell from my face. When he turned to Jin, the gentle man who'd wiped my tears was gone. In his place stood something cold and lethal, a switch flipped so fast I almost didn't catch the transition. How did they know the poison failed? One question, but it carried the weight of a death sentence. Jin grimaced. "Someone talked. We're tracking it down now, but find them." Dante's voice was ice wrapped in silk. "Bring them to the basement, alive. I want to know exactly what they said and who they said it to. And the Queen?" For a heartbeat, I thought he meant me, and my lungs seized. But Dante shook his head, already moving toward his closet. "Tell my grandmother I'll meet. Neutral ground. Tomorrow at sunset." He pulled out a black jacket, shrugging it on with practiced efficiency. "Tell her I'll bring proof of cooperation." Jin nodded and vanished as quickly as he'd appeared. I grabbed Dante's arm, desperation making me bold. "Proof of cooperation? What does that mean? You can't just hand me over to..." "I can't." The car was black, sleek, and smelled like leather and gun oil and the kind of danger that made your survival instincts scream to run. I sat in the back beside Dante wearing clothes that fit too perfectly to be coincidence. Black slacks that hugged my curves, a silk blouse the color of deep burgundy wine, shoes that looked like they belonged in a museum, not on actual pavement. He'd handed them to me without explanation an hour ago, and I'd been too numb from the bone marrow revelation to argue. Jin drove, silent and efficient, navigating Seattle's rain-soaked streets like he knew every shortcut, every blind spot, every place where the law didn't quite reach. The sky was bruised purple and gray, the sun setting behind storm clouds that looked like violence waiting to happen. Dante hadn't spoken since we left the penthouse. He sat with one arm stretched across the back of the seat, not touching me but close enough that I felt the heat of him, the coiled tension that suggested he could explode into lethal action at any second. "Why your grandmother?" I asked finally, because the silence was suffocating. "Of all people, why does she hate you enough to build an entire criminal empire just to destroy you?" He didn't look at me, just watched the city slide past through tinted windows. "Because she believes blood is destiny, that the Kim family should stay in the old business. Protection rackets, human trafficking, contract killing, the kind of operations that make you rich but hollow you out from the inside." His jaw tightened, and I saw the muscle jump. "When my father died, I took over. I was 24, barely old enough to understand what I was inheriting. She wanted me to marry her business partner's daughter, consolidate power, keep everything traditional, everything dirty." He paused. I refused. "Why?" "Because I met someone." His voice dropped, and for the first time I heard something vulnerable beneath the steel. A woman who thought I could be more than my last name, who made me want to burn the old empire down and build something cleaner, something I wouldn't have to hide from the world. My chest tightened. What happened to her? My grandmother had her killed. Flat, factual, devastating. Staged it to look like a rival gang execution. By the time I discovered the truth, it was too late, so I did what I should have done from the start. I exiled her, took everything she'd built, and dismantled her power base brick by brick. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were full of ghosts. She retaliated by forming the Crimson Serpent. We've been at war ever since. 3 years of moves and countermoves, each of us trying to destroy the other without crossing certain lines. His hand moved, fingers brushing my cheek so lightly I might have imagined it. But you, Amara, you made her desperate enough to cross those lines, because she knows what you are to me. A bone marrow match, I whispered, but it sounded hollow even to my own ears. No. His thumb traced my lower lip, and my breath hitched despite everything. You're the first person in 3 years who made me want to try again, to believe there's still something in me worth saving. The car stopped before I could respond. I blinked, realizing we'd pulled up to a building that looked ancient and sacred. Traditional architecture, all curved roof lines and red pillars, nestled between modern glass towers like a piece of history that refused to die. A wooden sign with Korean characters hung above the entrance. What is this place? A tea house, Dante said, already out of the car. He opened my door, offering his hand. Neutral ground. My grandmother is traditional in some ways. She won't spill blood in a place like this. It's considered sacred. Won't, I repeated, taking his hand because I had no choice. But she could. His smile was sharp and dark. She could. But then she'd lose face with the old families who still respect tradition, and face is everything to her. Inside, the tea house was a study in contrasts. Dark wood and silk screens painted with cherry blossoms, traditional low tables with cushions for kneeling, but men in expensive suits stationed at every exit, weapons barely concealed under tailored jackets, the scent of jasmine tea mixed with something metallic underneath. Fear, maybe, or the promise of violence held in check by cultural ritual. An elderly woman in traditional hanbok greeted us, bowing deeply. She murmured something in Korean to Dante, who responded in the same language, his tone respectful but commanding. She led us through the main room past other patrons who quickly looked away, recognizing danger when they saw it. The private room in the back was beautiful in a way that felt intentional, calculated. Paper screens painted with dragons and phoenixes, locked in eternal battle. A low table set with porcelain teacups, so delicate they looked like they might shatter if you breathed on them too hard. Silk cushions in deep red, and at the head of the table sat a woman who could only be the Serpent Queen. She was smaller than I'd imagined from the photos, bird-boned and elegant, her silver-streaked hair coiled into a perfect bun that probably took an hour to achieve. She wore a crimson hanbok, traditional and expensive, embroidered with gold thread that caught the light. Her hands were folded in her lap like she was posing for a portrait in a museum. But her face, God, her face was Dante's in feminine form. The same sharp cheekbones, the same cruel beauty, the same eyes that looked like they could see straight through flesh to the weakness beneath. "Grandson," she said in perfect British accented English, "you brought your pet." Dante's hand tightened on my back, a warning or comfort I couldn't tell. "Grandmother, you asked for proof of cooperation. Here she is." The old woman's gaze slid to me and I felt dissected, studied, catalogued as something less than human. "The poisoner who couldn't poison," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "How disappointing. I expected more from someone who carries such rare genetic markers." She knew. Of course she knew about the bone marrow match. She probably knew before Dante did. "Sit," she commanded, gesturing to the cushions across from her. "Let's discuss your failure properly." We sat, me beside Dante, close enough that our thighs touched. He poured tea with practiced grace, hands steady, and passed me a cup that I held but didn't drink. Across the table, 2 men flanked the Serpent Queen, both young and brutal-looking, both watching us with the kind of attention that preceded violence. "You killed my best operative," the Queen said conversationally, sipping her tea like we were discussing weather. "The one who recruited this girl's brother, Marcus Chen. Such a useful tool." "Marcus Chen is alive," Dante replied, his voice perfectly calm. "For now. Though after reviewing his gambling debts and seeing how quickly he spent your money, I'm reconsidering whether he's worth the cost of bullets." My breath caught. He knew where Marcus was, had him somewhere. The Queen smiled, and it was like watching a snake bare its fangs. The brother who sold her out for $75,000. Poetic, isn't it? Family is always the sharpest knife. Her eyes found mine. Tell me, girl, how does it feel knowing your own blood traded you and a child for gambling chips? The rage that had been building in my chest since I saw those photos threatened to explode, but I swallowed it down, played the role Dante had coached me on during the drive. It feels, I said, keeping my voice steady, like I chose the wrong side, but I'm a fast learner. Are you? She set down her cup with a delicate clink. Then you understand that child lives only because my grandson finds you useful. The moment he extracts what he needs from your bone marrow, the boy's treatment stops. So I suggest you make yourself very, very cooperative. Before I could respond, Dante's hand found mine under the table, squeezing once. A signal. I leaned into him, letting my free hand rest on his thigh, playing the part of the desperate woman who'd chosen survival over morality. I understand perfectly. The Queen's smile sharpened like a blade being whetted. How sweet. He's made you his whore already. Dante moved so fast I barely saw it. One second he was sitting beside me. The next he had a knife pressed to the throat of the guard on the Queen's right, the blade dimpling skin, a single drop of blood welling dark and wet against the silver edge. Careful, grandmother, he said, his voice soft as silk and twice as dangerous. Insult her again, and I'll paint your screens with his blood, and then I'll start on the other one, and then I'll come for you. The room crystallized into frozen violence. The second guard reached for his weapon, but the Queen raised one delicate hand, stopping him with just that small gesture. Her face remained placid, but I saw the calculation happening behind her eyes, a reassessment of threat levels, of how far her grandson would actually go. Still so dramatic, she murmured, but very well. The girl is off limits verbally, though I notice you didn't say I couldn't touch her. Dante released the guard, who stumbled back clutching his throat and sat down again. He pulled me close, his arm around my shoulders, proprietary and deliberate, making a statement. 2 weeks, he said. Give Isaiah 2 weeks without interference. No more manufactured complications. No more threats. In exchange, I'll give you a location, the warehouse on Pier 47 that you've been hunting for, full inventory of everything I've taken from your operations. Not good enough. The Queen leaned back, and I saw where Dante got his ability to project calm while planning murder. I want the research data, the university lab files you stole from my scientist, the genetic modification formulas. No. Then the boy loses 3 fingers. The words dropped like stones into still water. 1 from each hand and 1 from a foot, so he never forgets the price of your stubbornness. Time seemed to slow and crystallize. I felt every eye in the room on us, felt the weight of the guard's hands moving toward weapons, felt the air itself become sharp and cutting. But Dante sat perfectly still, his arm heavy across my shoulders, his breathing even, like he'd just been offered tea instead of my nephew's mutilation. You're negotiating with a child's body parts now, he said quietly. Father would be ashamed. Your father has been dead for 5 years. He doesn't get a vote. The Queen's cup hit the table with a sharp crack that made me flinch. But if you want to discuss family legacy, we can talk about how you've gone soft, how you're willing to burn everything our family built for a woman you've known for 9 months. I'm done being what you want me to be. Dante's fingers traced absent patterns on my shoulder, the touch intimate and deliberate. Here's the new deal. You leave Isaiah alone completely. No threats, no manufactured diseases, no complications. In exchange, I give you Marcus Chen, the brother who sold them both out. You can do whatever you want with him. My heart stopped. He was offering my brother like currency. And why would I want a failed gambler with loose lips? The Queen asked, but her interest had sharpened visibly. Because he knows things. The car hit a pothole and I lurched forward. Dante caught me instantly, his hands cradling my face, and suddenly we were too close, breathing the same air, the space between us charged with something electric and terrifying and inevitable. She could have killed you, he said, and his voice cracked in a way I'd never heard before, raw, broken. She could have pulled that trigger and you would have been gone and I would have... He stopped, jaw clenching, fighting for the control that had slipped through his fingers back in that tea house. "I can't do this without you," he whispered. "I thought I could. Thought I just needed your blood, your genetic material. But it's more than that now. You've gotten under my skin, Amara, and I don't know how to cut you out without bleeding to death." "Then don't," I breathed, and I meant it. God help me, I meant it. His forehead dropped to mine, and we stayed like that, two broken people holding each other together in the back of a speeding car while rain hammered the roof and the city tried to kill us. 2 weeks, he murmured against my skin. "We get Isaiah. We finish this. And then you decide if you want to stay in my world or walk away from it with enough money to start over anywhere you want." I closed my eyes, feeling the heat of him, the impossible safety of his arms despite everything he was, everything he'd done. "What if I want to burn your world down with you still in it?" His laugh was dark and broken and beautiful. "Then we'll make beautiful ashes together, Juggia." The car swerved suddenly, tires screaming on wet pavement. My eyes snapped open. "We've got a tail!" Jin's voice cut through the moment like a blade. "3 cars, Crimson Serpent, they're boxing us in." Dante pulled away from me, his mask sliding back into place with terrifying speed. The vulnerable man disappeared, replaced by the dragon. He checked his gun, then pulled a smaller weapon from the glove compartment and handed it to me. "Do you know how to use this?" I thought of Isaiah, of Marcus's betrayal, of the Queen's gun against my temple. I took the weapon, felt its weight in my palm. "I'll learn fast." His smile was savage and proud. "That's my girl." The warehouse district rose around us like a graveyard of rust and broken industry. Shipping containers stacked like coffins, puddles reflecting neon from the distant port lights, the smell of salt water and decay heavy in the air. Jin killed the headlights and we coasted to a stop behind an abandoned semi-truck, its tires long since stripped, windows shattered. "They're surrounding us," Jin reported, watching the rearview mirror. 2 behind, 1 circling to cut off the north exit. I count at least 12 men, maybe 15. Dante stared out at the maze of metal and shadow. "How long until backup arrives?" 20 minutes. Maybe 25 in this weather." "We don't have 20 minutes. Dante's voice was ice. "They'll breach the car in 5 and spray it with bullets until nothing inside is recognizable." My heart hammered against my ribs. "So what do we do?" He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw the calculation happening behind those dark eyes, saw the moment he made a choice that would cost him something. "When we get out of this car," he said carefully, "you're going to run. North exit past the blue container with the radiation symbol. There's a fence with a hole cut in it at coordinates I'll send to your phone. On the other side is a 24-hour gym. Lock yourself in the women's bathroom and don't come out until I text you it's clear. I'm not leaving you. You are." His hand found mine, fingers lacing tight. "Because what I'm about to do, you can't be here to witness. You'll hate me for it. Maybe forever. But you'll be alive to hate me, and that's all that matters. Dante, run, Amara." He cupped my face, kissed me hard and desperate, his mouth claiming mine with a hunger that tasted like goodbye and gasoline and the promise of violence. "Don't look back. Don't stop. Just run." He was out of the car before I could protest, Jin following immediately, both of them with weapons drawn. I scrambled out my side, rain immediately soaking through the expensive blouse, turning it cold and clingy against my skin. "Kim Dante!" A voice boomed from somewhere in the dark, amplified, echoing off metal. "The Queen wants a word." Dante spread his arms wide, making himself a target, and I watched in horror as at least 15 men emerged from behind containers and vehicles. Too many, all armed, red serpent tattoos visible even in the dim light. "Then tell her to come say it to my face," Dante called back, his voice carrying easy confidence, "instead of sending errand boys who'll be dead in 5 minutes. One of them stepped forward, taller than the rest, with a scar running from his eyebrow to his jaw. He smiled, and it was all teeth and malice. "Big words for a dead man," Scar said. "The Queen says you broke protocol, threatened her life in a sacred place. Can't let that slide." "I didn't threaten." Dante's voice was silk over steel. "I promised. There's a difference." Scar laughed, gestured to his crew. They fanned out, forming a circle, cutting off escape routes. "Drop the guns. Neil, maybe we make it quick. Maybe we even let the girl watch. I felt my blood turn to ice. Run, Amara, Dante said quietly, not looking at me. Now. No, now. And then he did something that made my heart stop. He dropped his gun. The clatter of metal on concrete echoed like a death knell. Jin stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Hyungnim, what are you— Drop it, Jin. Jin hesitated for only a heartbeat, then obeyed. His weapon hit the ground beside Dante's. The serpent men moved in, weapons trained, cocky now. They thought they'd won. Scar approached slowly, savoring the moment. On your knees, he ordered. Dante knelt, hands behind his head, compliant. Beaten. Everything about his posture screamed surrender. It was wrong. Everything in my body screamed it was wrong. Take the girl too, Scar said, gesturing toward me. Queen wants her breathing, but everything else is negotiable. Two men broke from the circle, heading my direction. I raised my gun with shaking hands, but I'd never fired a weapon in my life, and they knew it. Amara! Dante's voice cut through my panic, still calm, still controlled. Run! Don't look back! Don't stop! Just run! The sound of gunfire exploded behind me, but not from the serpent men. From Dante. I ran, sprinted toward the blue container with the radiation warning, my lungs burning, rain blinding me. Behind me, the sounds of violence erupted like a war zone. Rapid gunfire, men shouting, screaming, the wet sound of flesh being torn apart. I found the fence, found the hole Jin had cut weeks ago preparing for exactly this scenario, and threw myself through it. Metal scraped my arms, tearing the expensive silk. The gym was there, glowing fluorescent and surreal, completely out of place in this industrial nightmare. I crashed through the door and locked it, then stumbled to the women's bathroom and locked that too. Pressed my back against the cold tile wall and slid down, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. The gunfire continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Then silence, heavy and absolute. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. Amara Chen, a woman's voice, calm and professional. Who is this? Seattle PD, we have a situation at the warehouse district near Pier 47. Multiple casualties. One survivor is asking for you specifically. The world tilted. Is he alive? Ma'am, I need you to— I hung up and ran. The warehouse was a war zone bathed in red and blue strobe lights that turned everything into a nightmare. Police cars, ambulances, body bags being loaded, crime scene tape fluttering in the wind like funeral ribbons. I ducked under it, running toward the cluster of EMTs. An officer grabbed my arm. Ma'am, you can't— That's my— I didn't know what to call Dante. Employer, captor. The man I was falling in love with despite every reason not to. Please. Something in my face made the officer's expression soften. He led me to an ambulance parked at the edge of the scene. Dante sat on the back bumper, shirtless, covered in blood. So much blood I couldn't tell where he ended, and the violence began. An EMT was wrapping his ribs, and I counted wounds. One in his shoulder, two in his side, one that had grazed his neck, leaving a red smile below his jaw, another across his forearm, but he was alive, breathing. And when he saw me, his face crumpled with relief and regret, twisted together. You weren't supposed to come back, he said hoarsely. I pushed past the EMT and grabbed his face, needing to feel the heat of him, the reality. You got shot. 4 times, 5 times, you're covered in blood. Vest caught 3. He winced as the EMT tightened a bandage. The others missed anything vital. Jin had a backup piece strapped to his ankle. They didn't check properly. Got sloppy when they thought we'd surrendered. He reached up, his bloody hand cupping my cheek, and I didn't care about the mess. I got 6 of them before they even realized what was happening, he continued, his voice hollow. Jin got 4, the rest— He gestured vaguely at the body bags. I told you not to come back. Told you not to see this. Not to know what I'm capable of. I already knew, I said, and I meant it. I kissed him right there with police and EMTs watching, with his blood on my hands and rain washing it away in pink rivulets. Kissed him until he made a sound low in his throat and pulled me closer despite his wounds. When I pulled back, I pressed my forehead to his. I knew what you were. I chose you anyway. His hands shook as they cupped my face. Why? Because you chose me first. I brushed my thumb over his split lip. Because you gave up your empire for 2 weeks with Isaiah. Because you're the monster who makes me feel safe. The EMT cleared her throat. Sir, you need a hospital. No hospitals. Dante stood, swaying slightly. Amara, call Jin. We're going to the medical facility where Isaiah is. You're bleeding. I'll bleed there. He grabbed my hand, his grip weak but determined. We don't have time. The police will want statements I can't give without exposing everything. And we need to... His phone rang. He answered, listened, and his face went completely white. When? One word, but it carried the weight of devastation. He listened more, then slowly lowered the phone. What? I demanded. What happened? While we were pinned down here? His voice was carefully controlled, but I heard the fury beneath. A second Serpent team hit the medical facility. My blood turned to ice. Isaiah. They took him. He pulled me close, his arms steel bands around me despite his injuries. They have your nephew, Amara, and my grandmother just sent a video. He held up his phone. On the screen, Isaiah sat in a chair too big for his small body, looking terrified but unharmed. Behind him stood the Queen, her hand resting almost gently on his shoulder. 2 days, grandson. Her voice came through the speaker, cold and clear. Bring me Marcus Chen and the research encryption key, or the boy starts losing pieces. 1 finger every 12 hours until you comply. The video cut off. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My baby was in the hands of that monster. We're going to get him back, Dante said, his voice dropping to something deadly. I promise you, Amara, we're going to burn her entire operation to the ground and get Isaiah back. He pulled away just enough to look into my eyes, and what I saw there was absolute certainty wrapped in obsessive determination. But I need you to trust me one more time, he said. What I'm about to do, it's going to get dark. Darker than the warehouse. Darker than anything you've seen. Can you handle that? I thought of Isaiah's terrified face on that screen, thought of the Queen's cold smile, thought of everything I'd already survived to get this far. Burn it all down, I whispered. Whatever it takes. His smile was terrible and beautiful. Together? Together. He kissed me again, softer this time, like a promise. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Bring Marcus Chen from the holding facility, he said into the phone, and prep the basement interrogation room. We're about to find out exactly what he told the Serpents about our defenses. He hung up and looked at me. Your brother sold us out again. Told them when the guard rotation changes, where the blind spots are in our security. He's the reason they knew when to strike. Then let's make him fix it, I said, and I was surprised by how cold my own voice sounded. Let's make him tell us everything he knows about her operation, and if he won't talk, then we make him scream until he does, Dante finished. We stood there in the rain, covered in blood and rain and the ashes of who we used to be, 2 people who'd been pushed too far and had finally stopped apologizing for what we'd become. The monsters were coming for my son, so I was going to become something worse. The basement smelled like copper and concrete, an old fear. The kind of fear that had seeped into the walls over years of interrogations, confessions extracted through pain, and bodies that never made it back upstairs. Dante's private facility looked sterile from the outside, a medical clinic tucked between a Korean barbecue restaurant and a dry cleaner, completely unremarkable. But beneath the legitimate surgery suites and recovery rooms was this, a place where the dragon handled problems that couldn't be solved with money or threats. I followed him down metal stairs that echoed with each step, my hand gripping the railing because my legs felt like water. The EMT had bandaged his wounds in the car, pumped him full of antibiotics and painkillers that he'd probably metabolized too fast to matter. He moved like nothing had happened, like he hadn't been shot multiple times 2 hours ago. You don't have to see this, he said, pausing at the bottom of the stairs. I can handle the interrogation alone. You can wait upstairs with Jin, monitor the security feeds, and... No? My voice came out harder than I expected. He's my brother. He sold out my son. I need to see his face when he admits it. Dante studied me for a long moment, and I saw something like approval flicker in his eyes, or maybe concern, maybe both. Once you walk through that door, he said quietly, you can't unsee what happens. Can't unknow what I'm capable of when someone threatens what's mine. This isn't the warehouse where you ran away. This is you choosing to stand beside me while I break someone. Good. I pushed past him and opened the door myself. The room beyond was exactly what I expected and somehow worse. Concrete walls, a metal chair bolted to the floor, drain in the center of the room that had probably seen more blood than a slaughterhouse, surgical lights overhead that turned everything harsh and unforgiving. And in the chair, zip-tied and bleeding from a broken nose, was Marcus. My brother looked up when we entered, and his eyes went wide with desperate hope. Amara, thank God, tell them this is a mistake. Tell them I didn't what? I heard my voice, but it sounded like it belonged to someone else, someone colder. Didn't sell me to the Crimson Serpent for $75,000? Didn't give them detailed maps of Dante's security systems? Didn't tell them exactly when the guard rotation changed so they could kidnap Isaiah? His face crumpled. I can explain. Explain how you watched them synthesize a disease to infect a 4-year-old child? I stepped closer, and he flinched. Explain how you stood in their lab and said nothing while they manufactured the leverage to force me to commit murder? I didn't know they'd actually hurt him. Marcus's voice broke. They said it was just for show, just to scare you into cooperating. They promised he'd be fine once you finished the job. Liar. Dante's voice cut through the air like a blade. He moved, past me, pulling up photos on his phone. This is you, 2 months ago, standing in the lab while they ran toxicity tests on blood samples. Isaiah's blood samples, Marcus. You were there when they calibrated the dosage. He held up the phone, and I saw my brother's face in the photo, clear as day, standing beside a scientist in a white coat, looking uncomfortable, but not stopping anything. You knew, I whispered. You knew they were poisoning him, and you said nothing. They would have killed me. He lurched forward against his restraints. I owed money to people who don't negotiate, Amara. The Serpent offered to clear my debts, pay me, keep me safe. All I had to do was give them information. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. Dante crouched down in front of him, and even injured, even bandaged and probably running on adrenaline in spite, he radiated lethal authority. You chose poker over family. You chose your life over a child's, and now you're going to choose how much pain you endure before you tell me everything. He pulled out a knife, long, slim, the kind of blade designed for precision rather than brutality. Marcus's eyes went wild with terror. What do you know? Please, I'll talk. I'll tell you everything. I know you will. Dante tested the edge against his thumb, drawing a thin line of blood. The question is whether you'll tell me truth or more convenient lies. So we're going to establish some ground rules first. He looked back at me. Last chance to leave, Jagia. I pulled up a metal stool and sat down. Ask your questions. Something flickered across Dante's face. Pride, maybe, or recognition that I'd just crossed a line I couldn't uncross. He turned back to Marcus. The Serpent's compound, Dante said conversationally. Where is she keeping the boy? I don't know the exact location. The knife moved faster than I could track. Marcus screamed as a shallow cut opened across his forearm, precise and deliberate. Not deep enough to hit anything vital, but enough to hurt like hell. Wrong answer. Dante's voice remained perfectly calm. I know you've been to the compound. Your phone's GPS data shows 7 visits over the past 3 months, so let's try again. Where is she keeping Isaiah? Marcus sobbed, blood dripping from his arm. The estate in the hills, outside Redmond, the one with the Victorian architecture. It's got a medical wing in the east corridor, 3rd floor. Security? At least 40 guards, rotating shifts, cameras everywhere, biometric locks on the medical wing. Weaknesses? Marcus hesitated, and I saw Dante's hand tighten on the knife. The service entrance, Marcus gasped out. On the north side, it's how they bring in supplies. The lock is just mechanical, no biometrics. Guards change at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. There's a 3-minute window where the corridor is unwatched. Dante glanced at me. Did you know about the service entrance? No, I swear, I just learned about it last week when I was there for... He stopped. For what? My voice was ice. For the payment, he admitted, not meeting my eyes. They paid me $25,000 more after Isaiah was taken. Told me it was a bonus for good intelligence. The room tilted. They paid you extra for helping them kidnap him. I didn't know that's what they were paying me for. They just said it was for continued cooperation. I stood up, walked over and slapped him hard enough that his head snapped sideways. My hand stung, but the satisfaction was worth it. You took money while my son was being terrorized by that woman, I said, each word precise and cutting. While he was crying for me, while he was scared and alone, you were collecting payment. I'm sorry, Marcus sobbed. I'm so sorry, Amara. I never wanted any of this. I just got in too deep and couldn't find a way out. You could have told me. My voice broke despite my best efforts to keep it steady. I would have helped you. We would have figured it out together. Instead, you sold us both. I know. He finally looked at me, and his face was destroyed. I know I'm a coward. I know I'm everything you think I am, but please don't let him kill me. I'm still your brother. We're still family. No, I said, and the word felt final. You were my family. Past tense. Family doesn't do what you did. Family doesn't trade a child's life for poker chips and fear. I turned to Dante. What else do you need from him? Guard schedules, patrol patterns, any other security measures he knows about. Dante stood, his movements careful because of his injuries. And the encryption key's the location. The Queen thinks I have it on me, but it's stored somewhere she can't access. I need to know if Marcus told her where. Marcus shook his head frantically. I don't know about any encryption key, I swear. She never asked me about that. Dante studied him for a long moment, then nodded. I believe you. You're too much of a coward to lie right now. He pulled out his phone and started recording. Tell me everything you know about the compound's security, every detail. If you leave something out and we walk into a trap because of it, I'll mail pieces of you to the Queen and blame you for the assault. Understand? For the next 20 minutes, Marcus talked. Spilled everything about guard rotations, camera blind spots, the medical wing's layout, where the Queen usually positioned herself, which guards were loyal versus which ones were just mercenaries who could be bought. I listened to every word, memorizing details, watching my brother betray his employer with the same ease he'd betrayed me. Some people, I realized, were just built to survive by selling others out. It was in their nature, like scorpions and stinging. When Marcus finally finished, exhausted and still bleeding, Dante turned off the recording. What happens to him now? I asked. Dante looked at me, his expression unreadable. That's not my choice to make. He's your brother. Your decision. I stared at Marcus, who looked back at me with desperate, pleading eyes. The same eyes that used to look at me with love when we were kids. The same eyes that had cried at Mom's funeral, the same eyes that had held Isaiah for the first time and promised to always protect him. Keep him here, I said finally, alive. After we get Isaiah back, after this is over, you hand him to the federal agents he's supposedly been talking to. Let him testify against the Queen. Let him live with what he did. Relief flooded Marcus's face. Thank you, Amara. Thank you. Don't. I held up a hand. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because Isaiah shouldn't grow up knowing his uncle was murdered, even if that uncle is a piece of shit who doesn't deserve the air he breathes. But you and me, we're done. Forever. I walked to the door without looking back. Dante followed me out, and we climbed the stairs in silence. At the top, he caught my arm gently. You okay? No. I leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. But I will be once we get Isaiah back. He pulled me close, careful of his bandages, and I let myself sink into his warmth. We stood like that for a long moment, two people who'd been through hell and were preparing to walk back in. The assault happens tomorrow night, Dante said quietly. We hit the compound at 6 p.m. during the guard change, 3-minute window to breach the service entrance. Jin is pulling together a team of 20, our best people. We go in fast, extract Isaiah, and burn the whole thing down on our way out. And your grandmother? His arms tightened around me. She doesn't leave that compound alive. This ends tomorrow. I pulled back to look at him. I'm coming with you. Amara, no, I'm coming, I repeated firmly. He's my son. I'm not waiting in a car while you risk your life. We do this together. He studied my face, then slowly nodded. Together. But you follow my lead. You stay close to me. And if I tell you to run, you run. Agreed? Agreed. He kissed me then, soft and deep, his hands cradling my face like I was something precious he was terrified of breaking. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. After tomorrow, he whispered, if we survive this, I want you to know something. What? I love you. The words were simple, devastating. I know it's fast. I know it's insane. I know I'm a killer who's dragged you into darkness. But I love you, Amara, and Isaiah, and I will burn the entire world down to keep you both safe. Tears pricked my eyes. I love you too, even though I shouldn't, even though you're dangerous and violent and you've shown me things I can never unsee. I kissed him again. I choose you anyway. Then let's go get our son back, he said. Our son. Not my nephew, not Isaiah. Our son. And in that moment, standing in the hallway of a building where we'd just interrogated my brother, I realized that somewhere along the way, we'd become a family. A twisted, violent, completely unconventional family, but a family nonetheless. Tomorrow, we'd either rescue Isaiah and destroy the woman who'd terrorized us, or we'd die trying, but we'd do it together. And that was enough. The war room was exactly what it sounded like. A converted storage room filled with monitors, maps spread across tables, weapons laid out with military precision. Jin stood at the center, briefing the team Dante had assembled. 20 people, all loyal, all lethal, all ready to walk into hell. I stood beside Dante wearing tactical gear that Jin had sized for me. Kevlar vest, combat boots, a gun holstered at my hip that I'd spent the last 3 hours learning to actually use. Remember, Dante addressed the room, his voice carrying command that made everyone straighten. The primary objective is the boy. Everything else is secondary. We get Isaiah out alive no matter what. Understood? A chorus of affirmatives. The queen is mine, he continued. No one touches her except me. That's not negotiable. He looked at me. Ready? I thought of Isaiah's face on that video, thought of the queen's cold smile, thought of everything I'd survived to get here. Let's bring him home. The compound looked like something from a Gothic nightmare. Victorian architecture rising against a bruised twilight sky, all turrets and stone walls with manicured gardens that probably cost more to maintain than most people earned in a year. Beautiful and deadly, just like the woman who lived inside. We approached from the north in 3 vehicles, headlights off, moving through the service road like shadows. 6 p.m. exactly. The guard change happening right on schedule, just like Marcus had promised. I crouched beside Dante in the back of the lead vehicle, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. He checked his weapon one final time, then looked at me. Last chance to stay with the extraction team, he said quietly. Not happening. I checked my own gun, hands steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. I told you, we do this together. His smile was sharp and proud. Then stay close, follow my signals, and remember, if something goes wrong, we improvise. I finished his sentence. I know. The van stopped. Jin's voice crackled through our earpieces. Service entrance in sight. Guard rotation in progress. 30 seconds to window. Dante squeezed my hand once, then moved to the door. Teams 2 and 3 hold position until we breach. Team 1 with me. We poured out of the vehicle in absolute silence. 8 of us moving like liquid through the gardens, using shadows and sculptures for cover. The service entrance was exactly where Marcus said it would be. Steel door, mechanical lock, no cameras pointed directly at it. Jin worked the lock with tools that looked like they belonged in a spy movie. 15 seconds. 10. 5. The lock clicked. We're in, Jin whispered. Corridor clear, moving to medical wing. Inside, the compound was all dark wood and expensive carpeting that muffled our footsteps. We moved in formation, weapons up, clearing corners like we'd trained for this exact scenario. Because Dante had trained for this exact scenario, had been preparing for years to take down his grandmother's empire. The medical wing stairs appeared on our left, 3rd floor. We climbed in silence, each step bringing us closer to Isaiah, closer to ending this nightmare. A guard appeared at the top of the stairs. Dante moved before the man could shout, closing the distance in 3 silent strides. The guard went down without a sound, unconscious before he hit the carpet. 2 more guards around the corner met the same fate, taken down by Jin and another operative with brutal efficiency. Medical wing secured, Jin reported. Multiple rooms. Beginning search. My hands shook as we moved down the corridor, checking each door. Empty. Empty. A supply closet. Empty. Then I heard it. A small voice, terrified and trying to be brave. I want my mama. Isaiah! The scream tore from my throat before I could stop it. Dante kicked open the door, and there he was, my baby, sitting on a medical bed that was too big for his tiny body, an IV, in his arm, looking pale and scared, but alive. So beautifully, perfectly alive. Mama? His eyes went wide. I ran to him, scooping him up despite the IV, despite the monitors that started beeping in alarm. He wrapped his small arms around my neck and sobbed, and I held him so tight I was probably hurting him, but I couldn't let go, couldn't stop touching him to make sure he was real. I've got you, baby. Mama's here. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. We need to move, Dante said, already disconnecting the IV with practiced hands. Security will have heard the monitors. He was right. Alarms started blaring throughout the compound, red lights strobing in the hallways. All teams execute extraction, Dante commanded through his comm. North exit compromised. Moving to backup route. We ran, me carrying Isaiah, Dante leading with his weapon up, Jin covering our backs. Gunfire erupted somewhere below us, shouts in Korean, the sound of Dante's teams engaging the guards. We made it to the stairs when she appeared. The Serpent Queen stood at the bottom, flanked by 6 guards, all armed. She looked immaculate in white silk, not a hair out of place, like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. Grandson, she said calmly, you're making a terrible mistake. The only mistake I made was not killing you 3 years ago. Dante's gun never wavered from her face. Move aside, or I put a bullet between your eyes right here. You won't shoot me in front of the child. Her smile was serene, certain. You're not that far gone yet. I felt Isaiah trembling against me, his face buried in my neck. She was right. Dante hesitated, his finger on the trigger but not pulling. The Queen saw the hesitation and laughed. Still soft, still weak. Your father would be... My father, Dante interrupted, his voice dropping to something deadly calm, would be proud that I chose love over legacy, that I chose family over empire, that I chose to be better than the monster you tried to make me. He lowered his weapon slightly, and for a moment I thought he was surrendering. Then he looked at me. Close his eyes. I understood instantly, pressed Isaiah's face tight against my shoulder. Don't look, baby. Keep your eyes closed for Mama. The gunfire was deafening in the enclosed stairwell. Dante moved like violence-made art, taking down 3 guards before they could return fire. Jin got 2 more. The 6th ran, and one of our team pursued. The Queen dove behind a marble column, her white silk blooming red where a bullet had grazed her shoulder. Not fatal, but enough. Go! Dante shouted at me. Jin, get them out, now! What about you? I'm finishing this. He advanced on his grandmother's position. Go! Jin grabbed my arm and pulled me down the stairs, around the bodies, through corridors that had become a war zone. Behind us, I heard more gunfire, heard Dante's voice cold and final. You killed the woman I loved. You poisoned a child. You turned our family legacy into a nightmare. This ends now. A single shot, then silence. Jin got us to the north exit where a vehicle was waiting. He practically threw us inside. Drive, go! The driver floored it, tires screaming on the circular driveway. I looked back through the rear window and saw smoke beginning to pour from the compound's windows, flames licking at the Victorian gables. Dante, I gasped. He's still in there. He knows what he's doing, Jin said, but his voice was tight with worry. The compound receded behind us, and just as we hit the main road, explosions rocked the building. One after another, methodical and devastating. The entire east wing collapsed in a shower of stone and timber. No! I screamed. Isaiah was crying, clinging to me. Mama, what's happening? Where's Dante? I couldn't finish, couldn't say the words. Then Jin's calm crackled to life. Extraction successful. Dante's voice rough with smoke but alive. South exit clear, en route to rendezvous point. Relief hit me so hard I almost passed out. He's alive. He's okay. Isaiah lifted his head from my shoulder, his face streaked with tears. "Dante's coming?" "Yeah, baby, he's coming." 3 months later, the penthouse looked different in daylight. Softer somehow, without the shadows and danger that had defined it before. The closet where I'd once stood with poison in my hands had been completely renovated, painted sky blue with clouds on the ceiling, filled with toys and books and everything a 4-year-old boy could want. Isaiah's room, his sanctuary. I stood in the doorway watching him play with his dinosaurs, arranging them in careful lines while he narrated an elaborate story about meteors and survival. His color was back, warm brown skin glowing with health. The disease was gone, flushed from his system by treatments synthesized from my bone marrow, the same extraction that had saved Dante's life. 1 donation, 2 lives saved. The best trade I'd ever made. Strong arms wrapped around me from behind, and I leaned back into Dante's warmth. He rested his chin on my shoulder, watching Isaiah with the same wonder I felt every single day. "He's asking about dinosaur documentaries again," Dante murmured. "I think he's going to be a paleontologist. Or a storyteller." I smiled. He gets that from both of us. We stood there in comfortable silence, and I marveled at how much had changed in 3 months. The Crimson Serpent Syndicate had collapsed without the Queen's leadership, her remaining operations absorbed or dismantled by federal agents. Marcus had testified, secured his immunity deal, and disappeared into witness protection. I'd never see him again. That chapter was closed. Dante had kept his promise. He'd stepped back from the Kim family business, handed operations to Jin while he focused on legitimate enterprises. Tech investments, real estate, clean money that didn't come with blood on it. We were trying to build something better, something Isaiah could be proud of, when he was old enough to understand. "Mama! Dante!" Isaiah ran over, holding up a plastic T-Rex. "Look, I found the one you got me." Dante crouched down, his movements easy despite the scars that now marked his torso. Permanent reminders of the warehouse, the compound, everything we'd survived. "That's a beauty. What's his name?" "Rex, because he's a king." Isaiah's logic was unassailable. "Like you, Dante, you're a king too." Something soft crossed Dante's face. Over the past 3 months, he and Isaiah had formed a bond that made my chest ache in the best way. Bedtime stories every night, breakfast together every morning, Dante teaching Isaiah Korean words while Isaiah taught him about dinosaur periods, a family unconventional and born from darkness, but real. "Actually," Dante said slowly, glancing up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, "I wanted to talk to you both about something." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My heart stopped. "Isaiah," Dante said seriously, "I need to ask you a very important question first. Man to man." Isaiah straightened, trying to look grown up. "Okay. Would it be okay with you if I married your mama? If I became your family, officially?" Isaiah's eyes went huge. "You mean like, you'd be my dad? If you wanted me to be." Isaiah launched himself at Dante, nearly knocking him over. Yes. Can I call you Dad now, can I?" Dante's arms wrapped around him, and I saw his eyes go glassy. "Yeah, buddy, you can call me Dad." Isaiah pulled back. "Mama has to say yes first, though. That's how proposals work. I saw it in a movie." Dante stood, still holding the box, and turned to me. For a man who'd faced down dozens of armed enemies, who'd burned down his grandmother's empire, who'd killed without hesitation to protect us, he looked nervous. "Amara Chen," he said quietly. "I know this is insane. I know we've only known each other for a year. I know I dragged you into darkness and violence and a world you never asked for." He opened the box, revealing a ring that was somehow perfect, simple, elegant, a single diamond that caught the light. "But you're the first person who made me want to be better than what I was born to be. You stood beside me when you should have run. You chose me when you had every reason not to." His voice roughened. "I love you. I love Isaiah, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of that choice you made." Tears streamed down my face. "Yes. Yes? Yes, you impossible, dangerous, beautiful man. Yes." He slid the ring onto my finger, then kissed me while Isaiah cheered and danced around us, his dinosaurs forgotten. When we pulled apart, Dante rested his forehead against mine. No more secrets, no more darkness. Just this, just us. Just us, I agreed. That night, after Isaiah had fallen asleep clutching his T-Rex, after we'd tucked him in and dimmed the glow-in-the-dark stars, Dante and I stood at the penthouse windows looking out over Seattle. The city glittered below us, same as it always had, but it felt different now, less threatening, like we'd finally found our place in it. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked quietly. "Giving up the empire? Burning it all down?" He pulled me close, his arms secure around my waist. "Not even for a second. I traded an empire built on fear for a family built on love. That's the best deal I've ever made." I thought about the poison in the closet that had started everything. The impossible choice between murder and motherhood. The man who was supposed to be my victim becoming my salvation. "We were supposed to destroy each other," I murmured. "Instead, we saved each other." He kissed my temple. Funny how that worked out. Outside, the city continued its chaos. But inside our penthouse fortress, we'd built something that violence couldn't touch. A home, a family, a future that didn't require looking over our shoulders. The poison was gone, the monsters were dead, and the man I'd been sent to kill was teaching my son about dinosaurs and reading bedtime stories in Korean. Some love stories are written in blood and ashes. Some families are forged in fire. And sometimes, the monster you're supposed to fear becomes the only one who makes you feel safe. "Come to bed, Jagia," Dante whispered. "Tomorrow we start planning the wedding. Isaiah already has opinions about dinosaur-themed decorations." I laughed, letting him lead me away from the windows. Of course he does. We walked through the penthouse that had once been my prison and was now my home, past the closet that had been transformed from a place of tears into a nursery of dreams, past the bedroom where we'd first admitted this impossible thing between us, into a future we'd bled for, fought for, and finally won. Together. Always together.